who you are.
Be able to negotiate, because I know, just that thought can be very nerve wracking. How do I know? Am I gonna be to come off as arrogant or proud, but I don't want to be shortchanged, and so just, the emotional side of talking about money, but also what we can do to help ourselves and really be able to succeed. So excited about that.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Ro Lee. I'm, as well as Deborah, the other associate director here at Career and Professional Development. My background is more a little bit law related. I also do some pre-law advising for some of the schools on campus as well. And I think this topic is actually really important because the negotiation factor, a lot of people, like Deborah said, they don't know how to negotiate because they're not sure how to convey their worth in a way where you're doing it confidently and professionally, but in a way where you still get what you want out of that value or out of that job or opportunity. So I think this is really important, people. I know that we're going to talk about the psychology of money, but also the psychology behind negotiation is actually really interesting, depending on what your background is, where you're coming from, and where you want to go. So I think this will be an interesting talk. And before we really got started, I just want to ask Professor, what was the most interesting challenge that you remember from that 1 year long relationship with your brother?
One of the most interesting ones, I would say, was we did a half marathon at Big Sur, which involved, I think 2,000 or 3,000 feet of elevation gain. And it was going to be tough. We knew it was going to be tough. But we've both been working out, training and so on. I was living in Arizona at the time, and so I decided to do my final long run 2 weeks before the half marathon. And I headed out at about 6:30 in the morning for this long run, and I got about 5 miles into the run, and I just started to feel bad. And I've never quit a run, never in my life. I've always been able to power through it. So I just kept powering through it. And I got to about the 8-mile mark, and I just started to have these fantasies of water bottles. Like, because I had headed out in a run in the desert with no water, not too smart. And I started to think, okay, if I stopped at a hospital, they'd give me water. If I stopped at Starbucks, they'd probably give me water. And yet I didn't do any of those things. I just kept going. And finally, about the 10-mile mark, I couldn't take another step. I was just like, I've never done that. I've never been able to stop before. I stopped, I walked a little bit, and I tried running, and I maybe got like 3 or 4 steps in. And I pulled my phone, I called my wife and I said, can you come pick me up? I just can't, I can't do this. And that really shook my confidence because I'm going to run a marathon in 2 weeks. But I then used that as a learning opportunity. Okay, I just failed at something. What did I learn from that? And it really was that, okay, I've got to be better prepared. I've got to have water. I've got to listen to my body. I mean, it really set me up so that when we did run the half marathon, it was a great run. Totally fun.
Thank you.
That's cool.
And we will always translate that back to money. So you're gonna a little bit right? So you just save a little bit each time so you can be prepared, right? So a little bบof water would have really helped him for that end result. Okay.
Yes.
Let's do it. Okay, you're on.
So we're talking about the art of negotiating for salary, for an offer. And one of the biggest stumbling blocks, I think, in that negotiation is your own personal attitude toward money. Because that's one of those things we don't talk about. That and sex, I guess, or, probably 2 things we just don't talk about our attitudes towards money. And they come to us from a young age. We learn them growing up. We learn them from our parents, from situations we've been in, and they start to become part of who we are. And yet we don't really think about them or acknowledge them. They're just kind of lingering in the background there. And maybe we're a person who has insecurities about money, anxieties about money. Maybe we're a person who has, they don't really care. We all have these differences about money, but we don't really hold up a mirror to look at them. And so one of the first steps I think I would ask you to do is to polish that mirror. Take a look in the mirror. And how do I feel about money? What is my attitude toward money? how do I react? Because that reaction, that attitude, that feeling about money is going to then set you up for success or failure in that negotiation. So I want you to think just a little bit about the different emojis associated with money. And if you're willing, anyone want to just tell me what emoji comes to them? When you think about money, what emoji?
And feel free to type it in the chat too, for those
Absolutely, or
of you.
even enter the emoji.
Yeah, just enter your emoji in the chat or ask questions.
Anyone want to share their emoji? Yeah,
I would say bottom right, the happy one.
the happy one?
Mhm.
Yeah, the same here.
Happy one? Yeah.
I'd say one green and the middle one, bottom.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
There's an emoji for like disgust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Good, thank you. I mean, because that's the initial, that what you're doing is you're starting that reflection about money. What do we get online? Any?
So May put like a little, oh, you. can
Oh,
see
I
her,
love
like,
that. I
little
love that,
green
yeah.
face, And then Michelle, and then Anisha,
Perfect.
yeah, so we have a few up there.
That's
Oh,
great.
look at this one.
Oh, yeah.
Anisha,
Well done.
yep. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Hello, everyone.
Go ahead, you can talk. I'm not sure who's speaking.
Oh, I was just saying hello.
Oh, hi,
Hi.
okay.
All right,
I think one thing about the emotional side of money too, is that it depends on also where you are in your life, what stage of life you're in, right? I know that when I was beginning, I was 25 when I went through my first layoff. I was terrified. Like I was just thinking, what am I gonna do now? I was just about to turn 20, no, I was 25. And it was scary. And so that's why I'll always talk about preparing for your future self, because that point, I was like, no one can take care of me but me. And I knew another layoff would come at some point in my life. It was inevitable. So that freaked me out. But my parents did teach me a lot about money. But most parents don't ever talk about it, like Stephen had said. They don't talk about money or sex.
yeah.
Right?
And so we've got all these different thoughts about money, and some of them are just like, well, I'll worry about that later. I mean, I don't, I'm making too little money now to think about these things. But as Michelle would tell you, it's never too early to start thinking about these things. Because what you do in your 20s and 30s really sets you up for how you're gonna live in your 50s, 60s, and 70s. It's crazy how much difference that makes to start early. But I want to pull us to the psychology of money and ask you, what does it mean to be wealthy? Yeah,
Passive income.
passive income, okay? So that you don't have to work, but you got that money coming in. Yeah.
For me, it's not necessarily financial, it could be like, I have time. So be here and be in this space.
Wealth is time. Yeah.
I was gonna say, financial freedom to be working, that's the, of stress.
Financial freedom, do what you would like when you want it, on your terms. I like that. Yeah.
Anybody online want to talk about what it means to be wealthy? Just drop it in the chat.
You know, the first point in my life when I felt truly wealthy was right after grad school. I was not, but I felt that way. My wife and I were just getting married. We both graduated with our PhDs. We had a bunch of credit card debt because as soon as we got our PhDs, we got credit cards and we backpacked around Europe for 6 weeks and decided to use the credit card to pay for 6 weeks backpacking in Europe. But we had both started jobs as assistant professors. We weren't making great money. Together we were making 66,000. That's our combined income, 2 full-time salaries. So we were not making great, but the delta from making about 20,000 a year to making 66,000 a year is huge. And that delta is what made us feel wealthy. It was what we were used to spending versus what we had. And our spending hadn't ramped up to 66,000 a year yet. And so that freedom, it just felt like, wow. But what, I mean, we can do so much now. That is that freedom of wealth, that feeling of wealth. And I think I've kind of evolved to the point where, for me now, that feeling of wealth is one very much like you're saying, that it's that feeling of being able to choose what you want to do without worrying about the financial. And I think the wealth ironically comes at a point where the money is no longer the issue. It's there in the background. It shifts from the foreground to the background. And life then, it almost becomes independent of the money. I think that is a point that if you can get to, and if you put my two thoughts together, and if I'll finish a sentence, you'll be able to actually put those two thoughts together. But if you think about that initial feeling of wealth because our spending hadn't ramped up to what we were making, and that idea of not having to worry about the money, I think that if you can keep that spending below what you're making, there's a feeling of wealth there. Because the one thing we know from years of research on money is that more money does not make you happier. It does to a point. It does to a point. And if you are below a level, it's definitely going to impact your happiness. But what we find out is that there's this law of diminishing return. So that as you make more money, and I hope this comes through for the people watching online. As you make more money, this is money, this is happiness. We kind of see this sort of thing going on. Where there's a point, and it used to be around $70,000. Now the research has shown that it climbs up, but there's a point where it doesn't make any more difference. Because you just spend more and more and more, and it doesn't materially impact your happiness. Where that point is different for different people. And it's related to what you're doing with that money, how you spend it. So that's kind of the get us thinking about what it means to think about money, to think about wealth. Let's now start to transition that into what does that mean for what you're going to ask for in a salary.
And then a few people put having them on here, having the means to live a comfortable life, just right enough so they don't have to depend on others, freedom, less stress, ability, wanting to be able to afford what you want, confidence, necessity, the ability to conveniences, when and where without a second thought. So we appreciate that. Keep typing stuff in the chat. So I'm gonna see if I can get, the Zoom is going a little slow for us today, so we're just gonna, oh, there we go. You've already met Deborah, Roe, and I. And so what we're gonna talk about now is understanding your worth. And I think that this is, and I struggle with this too. I know what I'm worth, but I have to convince other people to know what I'm worth, right? So really understanding your worth and doing some research on the market value. Like if you're going to be in my position in South Carolina, in Georgia, or in Kansas, the salary is gonna be much less. Just is, because the cost of living is less, right? So you need to understand what your market value is in Southern California versus Northern California versus Central California, wherever you're gonna be. But do your research in the trends, like what's happening today, what is the economic landscape in your area and that employment landscape, and knowing what your worth is. A lot of times students will come to us and they'll say, well, I have only had these positions. I need you to translate those positions out of your head from just a retail job to understanding that you've done financial transactions, that you've done negotiation, that you're doing customer service, that you're engaging with people every single day. You're, navigating different challenges. So take out what the position is and think about the skills and competencies. And then understanding, that's the next one, the unique value proposition, in the sense of identifying what your skills are. I don't want to hear that I was just a student worker on campus. That's why in our office, we have a data and analytics specialist, and we have the peer career consultants and the digital marketing managers, and we have all kinds of different titles so that we can help leverage what you're doing. And then what makes you a strong candidate? You have to believe it first before you can project it. And so you need to understand the position, the company, the research, the market that you're in, the industry that you're in, and what makes you that special person. So you really have to understand your worth. But the problem is most people have to internalize it first. You've got to believe it first. You have to know what your worth is so that you can project it out. And I want you to be confident when you're in that space. I've only once in my career seen someone rescind an offer because someone tried to negotiate, one time. And that was just, they were dodging bullets. I tell you, it was all the red flags were there. That was fantastic. You know, so I told my client, hey, this is great news. They're like, why? I'm like, because they've indicated it wouldn't be a place that you would want to be. If you can't negotiate anything, then it's just not a place. Then it's just gonna be a really stringent, the boundaries are gonna be a little too tight. So, Deborah, you have anything to say about that one? If I can switch the slide.
I was just gonna say, talking about understanding ourselves and our own worth, and I think it goes back to what Professor Gillian was saying, is that the whole psychological thing behind it. Because even for myself, I had to get to a point where I really had confidence in who I was and the value that I brought. And that was really working through a lot of things. And as Michelle said, doing that assessment, like what skills do I have? What have I done in the past? Not the job title, but what have I done? What am I bringing that's going to bring value, and becoming really confident in that. And so a lot of the clients that we meet with really struggle. They don't feel like they have a lot of worth, or I'll just be happy if they give me this number. And they're gonna settle for that in one sense, if they have more value than that. So I think it is important to go through those steps and really understand yourself, understand what you've done in the sense of the skills. So, as Michelle was saying, retail isn't just just retail. It's that problem solving, customer satisfaction. So looking behind the title and the task to what skills were you using? Were you analyzing things? Were you solving problems? Were you doing research and putting together propositions and vision casting? So really take the time to make those assessments, because then you're going to have that confidence when you've been able to go through that.
And I just have 2 quick points. The first point is, when you're negotiating, a lot of people think negotiating is like a bad word. Like, oh, I'm gonna negotiate my salary. They offered me 89, but I want 100, right? And they get into this mode. We're in SoCal, so a lot of people get into mode of like, it's like a car dealership. I'll say this, they'll say this, maybe we'll meet in the middle. There's this psychology behind negotiation where some people are not confident, right? So that's the first point. There, you have to realize why you had that conflict. But the second point about your worth and your value, some people, we're all saying you have to know your worth, you have to know your value. Some people don't know how to evaluate themselves. Like Professor Gillian said, polish that mirror up to look at yourself. Sometimes that's really hard. Well, guess what? Our office is here to help you with that first initial steps on how to evaluate yourself. Some of us will confess, we love to work on your stuff and we don't like to work on our stuff, right? You see doctors all the time, don't drink, don't smoke. And what are they doing during the break? Oh gosh, that patient is great, right? So utilize our office for the first initial steps so you get to practice. Oh, this is how I should be evaluating myself. Other people see my worth. I have to learn and practice how to establish my worth as well.
Let's grab the question really quick, sorry. Oh, very true, yes, thank you. Let me do this. One thing I think about all the time is negotiation is a conversation. It's not a conflict. Just have a conversation with them. And so, hey, William, come on in. And then preparation is key. So gather the data, rehearse your responses, and anticipate counter offers. When I mean rehearse your responses, don't think about what you're going to say. I need you to verbally say it, because it's going to come out differently than what is in your head. We are here to help you in a safe space to talk about it. The last one, though, is really important. Know your non-negotiables. So I'm going to tell you my non-negotiable when I started at CGU, and most people are like, really? I absolutely would not accept the job if I could not go to my kids' cross-country and track races. That was a non-negotiable for me. I knew that I only had a couple of years. They were walking out the door as adults. They would never come back as a child. They could move back in the house, but they would never come back as a child. And I didn't want to miss that. And so I negotiated Wednesday afternoons during track season for 6 weeks, and then anything else that popped up. And my supervisor at the time said, no issue, and that was it. And so I just felt like that was so important to me because there were many years that I didn't do that. And I missed all of that, and I didn't want to do that anymore. That was a non-negotiable for me. My last institution, non-negotiable. I know it sounds funny, but the parking. Easy place to park, but they had us park off campus. We had to walk 3 or 4 blocks. I'm fine with that. But the parking structure was unsafe. There was a lot of people that were in the stairwell doing drugs all the time, injecting themselves with things. No joke. I was not willing to do that anymore. It was unsafe and dangerous for me. I negotiated a parking spot. So there's things that you're gonna think, I never thought about that. One of my positions, I negotiated starting my retirement earlier. They wouldn't let me start for the first 3 months. And I said, you don't have to contribute if that's your policy, but I want to contribute. And they wouldn't let me, so I negotiated that. I said, that's fine. I just don't need to take the job. I can do it somewhere else. So they gave me that pass to do it. So I want you to think of negotiation of everything. If you want a tree outside your window and you know that there'd be a tree there, you know, that's your non-negotiable, you need to think about it. If you know that you are in the sandwich generation or you have an aging parent and every one Friday out of every month you have to be with your parent, that you negotiate it. Okay, so I want you to think about what that means. It's not just about salary. Any thoughts? Yes, Laura. And then anybody online.
More of like a question, but like, I know like you've been in your field for like over 30 years. But for someone who's just starting out, like entry level, you kind of don't have, I don't know what to call it, but you don't have a leg to stand
The
on.
leverage, yes.
Oh, I don't need to take the job, you know,
Mhm.
you know, so it's like, oh, I kind of just have to.
Yeah,
I think though, even at that level, the know your non-negotiables is so clear, it's so critical that, when I was at your stage and, you know, just starting out my first job, after grad school, I had 2 offers, you know, one from Louisiana State University, one from Carnegie Mellon University. Louisiana State University was in psychology, Carnegie Mellon was in the business school. Carnegie Mellon was almost twice the salary of LSU. I had a bunch of non-negotiables. I wanted to be someplace warm. Louisiana's warm. Pittsburgh's not warm. I wanted to have someplace where my wife would also have an opportunity for a job. LSU was willing to do whatever it could to get her position. Carnegie Mellon said, yeah, it's tough. And then finally, when I went out for dinner at both those places, I just looked at my colleagues. At LSU, they were laughing, they were having fun. Carnegie Mellon, they look exhausted. They look drawn, they look like they,
Yeah.
and I just was, what sort of life do I want? You know, my non-negotiables were the life I was gonna lead.
mhm.
That became far more important. So this is probably flies in the face of everything you're saying about, you know, initial salaries and building over time. But to me, it was far more important to choose a lifestyle rather than the higher salary.
And that's exactly what we want you to do. And Laura, no, you are wrong. You do have a leg to stand on, and everyone on here is telling you you do. So it's, again, it's about confidence, right? So it's that confidence of, it doesn't matter where you are in your career. I remember things in my first career trying to negotiate and feeling like, you know, a complete door. But at the same time, it's all about also the conversation. It's not something that's a conflict. It's just like, I'd like you to consider this before I accept the offer. You're gonna negotiate future vacations that you may have already planned. There's a lot of things, but Stephen's right. It's about the lifestyle. The salary will come. But it's really, he could have made twice as much, but he would have been miserable. Whether his partner, just everything, every important aspect of his life was leaning towards this other space. And so he chose the path that would keep him happy, holistically happy, than just salary happy, because it would have just eventually taken a turn. So, okay. Let me see if I can make this thing work. Hold on. Okay, so we kind of already went through some of this, but you do want to, do your research. Confidence is key. Oh, do you need us to change it? Okay, everything okay? Yeah, okay. Confidence is key. It doesn't happen overnight. Just let's practice talking about it. Let's practice feeling confident first. You're in a space with the four of us that easily could meet with all of you and talk about what your skill set is. Be patient, know your worth, go in prepared. You would never go to Stephen's class, the last day of class, and say, I'm here. I know it's my first day, but I'm gonna pass. None of you would do that. Be prepared. Really be prepared. I haven't always been prepared. Consider the entire compensation package. When I'm talking the entire one, we've already talked about all of that. Like, are they gonna help you move possibly? Are you gonna have, are they gonna give you a car if it's one of those spaces? Do you have the option to maybe do a different type of shift, whether it be remote or hybrid or the 980 or the 880 or whatever you do, right? What works in your life? I have had supervisors who leave for 2 hours out of the day to take their kids places, or I had one supervisor in the past who wanted to have dinner with her partner, like every night she wanted to have dinner with her husband between these hours, and then she said, I'll get back on, and it saved like everything about them and their marriage, bless you. Be flexible, please be flexible, just have some flexibility, it's not just about you, but we want it to be about you all the time.
Let me give you just a quick story
Yeah.
that links be patient, be flexible. When I was at Arizona, I was asked by the dean to be the vice dean of this college. It was a couple step up promotion for me. And I presented my salary expectations for that. We negotiated, the hours. I told them I wouldn't work Friday afternoon because I pick up my kids Friday afternoon. That's my day to pick them up from the school bus. And, so we negotiated all that sort of stuff. But then when it came to salary, I presented what I thought was fair. And he kind of hesitated and said that could be a problem, just with how other people see that. And so I started looking at it from his point of view. And I think that's part of what Michelle mean with, is this a conversation? It's not a win-lose negotiation. I was thinking, okay, he's looking out for me, really. When he's saying that could be a problem, he's looking at what this might do in terms of other people's perceptions of me. So he's actually helping me out here in terms of how others are going to treat me. That was useful for me to think about. But I'm not going to give it up, right? I'm not going to say, yeah, you're right. I don't think, I said, I think I understand what you're saying. And that makes sense to take something that's lower than some line. But what I'd ask you to do is, after I prove my worth to you over this next year, and I totally impress you with the job I'm doing, I'd like you to reconsider my salary. And he said, absolutely. And then after that 1 year, he gave me a far bigger bump than I ever asked for originally. So it was that patience and that flexibility to understand what he was telling me as well.
You can come in, it's okay, maybe not. Thank you. I agree 100%. I'm gonna try to go to the next
I
slide.
was just gonna say
Yeah.
one thing, that feel free to ask for time. I think that when we receive an offer, we feel like, oh, I gotta hurry and give them an answer, but you can ask for time. Can I have a couple days? Or when do you need my response by? I need to look this over, talk it over with my partner or with whomever, and just really make sure that this is gonna work for me. And so take that time, don't feel like, and if they're pressuring you, know you have to respond right now. I think that's a red flag of right, when you need it right at the moment. Yeah,
To your point, I feel like the entry, to your question, the entry level, like excitement of pick up the thing, like that's where patience could come really into play too, because then it's like, okay, like calm myself down, actually look at the logistics, think through the logistics of how my life would be, would feel good in that, like now that I've overcome the rush of joy from being accepted, because it feels good to me.
Sure. And that will never end. That will be forever. We're all excited when we get that, but you're absolutely right. I recently had a private client of mine who accepted the offer right when she got the offer. And I was so frustrated because I had talked to her about it. Do not accept the offer. Just say, oh, this is amazing. Can I see the package? I would love to review everything in detail. I need you to practice those words coming out of your mouth, because when you get the offer, you're gonna be so excited. You'll be like, yes, And then I'm gonna be like, no, not yet. Because then you lose that space to negotiate, right? We're excited. But I wanna make sure that they don't make you wait 6 months to get medical insurance or whatever the case is, right? Or you can negotiate your start date so that in case you're off of insurance and you need to go on insurance. You can do anything, so keep that in mind, but Deborah had actually led right into the next one, so silence is powerful, let them respond first. Right, so let them just talk it out, it's hard for me, I'm an extrovert talker. I talk before I think. So my husband's taught me, stay silent. Yes, I work on it every single day. So that's amazing. And then I just go silent. You know, in my mind, I want to say a million things. So just silence. Use the I statements. I'm so excited. I would bring this to the company, right? So try to do that. Leverage multiple offers, use competing offers if possible, but don't go crazy. So he had 2 offers, right? At Carnegie Mellon, and then the other one was at Louisiana, right? And so there were 2 offers that he could work with, so he had some leverage. And when you're applying for things, you'll have that leverage. And negotiate beyond the salary, we've already talked about it, but you can negotiate professional development, bonuses, you can negotiate all kinds of things, parking lots, going to your kids' races, whatever is important to you. I need you to make sure that's part, because these are your most productive waking hours. All of us, we're in our most productive waking hours right now, and we are not with our family, we are not with our loved ones. And so we have to make sure that we have that space. We could make, I mean, I've had some of my clients in the past, they're like, oh, I make this much money and I'm doing so great. I mean, that's fantastic. How many hours a week do you work? They're like, oh, yeah, that's rough. It's normally 70 or 80 hours a week. I'm like, yeah, so actually you make half of that because the typical job is 40 hours a week, we'll say. And so your salary is at 100,000. That means you make 50,000. They're like, no. I'm like, yes. You know, so you've got to think about it because you're doing 2 full-time jobs, right? In one job. So really think about that.
It's always easier to negotiate before you accept than to try and go back after you've already been in the job, so think about that too. Yes, Tom.
I was gonna ask about that, but if you are in a situation, for example, like we just graduated, it's the only offer, or you've been out of work for a little while and you don't really, you're looking for employment, then you finally get an offer. In that situation, is it beneficial to still try and negotiate, or is it beneficial to work, show your work, then negotiate once they see you're a valued employee? Because sometimes you are going to be in a situation where you just need a job.
Well, Professor Gillian mentioned in that offer at LSU, he negotiated his potential raise by saying, I'll take this, but then after a year and after I impress you. So he laid the framework to get to that next step. The question you can always ask in any negotiation is this negotiable? Right? Most people don't want to say no, right? And also there's a salary range usually for that job, whether you know that or not, whether it's posted or not. So then HR or the dean or whoever it is, they don't say no, they say, well, what are you thinking about? Right? Once they say that, oh, there is a little window, right? So then that's when you can do your pitch, like what we shared before, the other slides about like how you show your worth and your value. But the first offer you get, they're trying to go in the middle. They want to get you because you went through the whole process. They want you, but they want you not always, but they want you, they have to save money too, right? So you have to realize it's a game. It's not a conflict, it's a game that you have to play a little bit more. But you have to know all the rules of the game and all the pieces in order to actually compete, right? So that offer, there was a client that Michelle had, that first job after PhD.
Yeah.
You share, it's your client.
No.
And so she was talking with her and I was sitting in when I was learning. And then, so this is the first job after a PhD and she got, I guess, a couple offers. But then one of them was, I believe, in Texas. Yeah. And she said, well, the salary is not as what I was thinking of. But then I remember Michelle said, but look at the whole package. They're offering, was it a tax benefit or?
Yeah, they were offering all kinds of things and then travel and professional development and research money. It was just, you have to look at the package.
Yeah, and it was worth more.
And it was worth more.
She always does that. Even when she hired me, she was like, I was at Pepperdine and I was driving like 30 miles. And she's like, you're gonna save so much money on gas if you move over here and then you go to Claremont. So I was like, I didn't even think about that. So there are other things that you have to think about that are outside of that offer letter, but you have to make sure what, like everybody said, what your non-negotiables are. Yeah.
But I would negotiate from the beginning. When I negotiated with Diane, when I first came here, she was like, oh, you're gonna negotiate salary. I said, of course I am. I said, but the most important thing is my kids' races. And she was like, I didn't expect that. And I said, because I was out for 18 months. I took a sabbatical. I left work in March of 2020, before the pandemic, actually. Didn't go back until August of 21. And that was for me to do. And I wasn't desperate, but I was getting there. I was like, oh, maybe I should get a job, So think about it, but know your negotiables. One of my colleagues years ago, when we both worked at LMU, and then she moved to a different university. She's like, oh, but the salary's less. I said, yeah, but you're driving instead of 2 hours, one direction, literally 4 hours a day, she'd be driving 10 minutes. And the insurance was less at the new place. And so it became actually more money because she was paying less for insurance. You've got to look at the package. So these are some of the things up there. Obviously not everything. We just want to put some things up there. We are coming to a close, and I'm sorry for everyone, just because of the fact that we do need to make sure that we're out in enough time. But close the deal. So express gratitude. I appreciate your time today. I'm sure you were anticipating me coming in to negotiate, and just want to thank you for giving me this opportunity and space to kind of share what's important to me. If they don't negotiate with you, no problem. You will find something else, right? You've got to be in the space that you have to take care of yourself. It has to start internal before you can project out. As for written confirmation, so what Stephen had done, definitely, it might have been different then, but you have to have written confirmation, because it's come back to bite me multiple times. And know when to walk away, know when it's okay to just decline the offer. And it's better for you. It really, really is. I'm gonna just glance really quick to see some of the things.
Mr. Glancy, that one just final thing in terms of, I
Yes.
started off here talking about what your attitudes are toward money. That person you're negotiating with also has hang-ups and attitudes toward money. And you don't know how they're looking at, they may be thinking of their negotiation as their worth as a manager. They may be thinking of the game. They may be, and so part of what you're doing by having this conversation is trying to understand how they're approaching this negotiation. That maybe if you negotiate with them, you're actually buying respect. And you're buying credibility, and that's gonna help you out down the road. But you've got to engage in that conversation, that discussion of the negotiation in order to learn that.
Yeah. Any last questions before, the slides will be available, they'll be on our website. This is our last program for this academic year. We already have fall's programs listed on our website as well. We'll invite you to all of those. The links will be available on June 1st, but I just want to take a special thank you to Dr. Gillian. Thank you so much for being here today. So, and then for all of you online, just feel free to email any of us. I think there were about 23 or 24 people online. I can't really tell. But I appreciate your insight. So we're going to close up so the faculty member coming in can get in here soon. But any last questions online or in person? When you think about it and it's 1 o'clock in the morning, don't worry.
Email.
Yeah, just email it.
Thank you very much for the great speech.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, wonderful.